All right, y'all ready? Perfect. All right, so this is our SPED training for our new staff, and we're gonna go over, I gave you guys an agenda, but we're going to, let's see. So we're gonna go over what we're gonna do right when the ARD has been scheduled. So as soon as you get that email from Beth that she has scheduled it and it's on the calendar, what you're supposed to do, we're gonna go through some steps in Success Ed, and then the last little bit is going to be our questions. All right, so you get an email from Beth, and your ARD is usually scheduled out 30 days once you get that email. The first thing that I would have you do is fill out your ARD checklist. So that was this form that you got. At the top, you'll put your student's name, and then you can put your ARD date and ARD time. And then I would start filling out as much of this as possible. So sending the ARD notice, that's going to be done by Susan, so you don't have to worry about that part. But I would make a note in the Excel spreadsheet that she shared with you, whether the parent is coming in person, by phone, or is not going to come at all. The next part is your parent input email. You need to make sure you send that out to your parents so you can get feedback from them. That input can be put into your class and your transition. So anything that they say can go into those two spots. And then teacher input email. So that's going to go to all the teachers your kids have. I do have a template right here that I'm going to show you guys, and I'm going to send all of this to you. But this is a great template. You're going to send it to your teachers. You want to be strict, knowing that, hey, they need to provide meaningful information to you and feedback that is going to be useful in their class, because you're not in the classroom with the students, so you need to make sure that you know exactly what's going on. This is a great template for the teacher. I would also include any inclusion teachers on that because they can fill out that. And then at the bottom is going to be your parent email. This can go once you have finished everything and you're attaching the class and goals. Make sure those are also sent home about 5 days beforehand. So that's our parent emails and our staff emails. If you don't get a staff member to return your email by your certain date, I would go ahead and send an extra one. Personally, I'll highlight who fills them out, and then I'll rewrite on here that I sent an extra one, and then I'll star the ones that fill it out late. That way I just know so I don't forget. The next part is going to be when we pull the student. So you can pull the student. I try to do it during electives, that way you're not pulling out of core classes, but really just whenever you have time. We have the questionnaire. This one is tailored strictly to what you need to know for transition, so I also have a copy of that up here for you. You can make copies and use it. But it's going to ask them exactly what they're going to do after graduation, what their backup plans are, everything about college, if they've worked, how they plan to pay for college. For most of them, I put financial aid, because everyone has to fill out the FAFSA paperwork whenever they're a senior as a graduation requirement. I like to know how they feel they're doing in their classrooms and what makes them successful. That way it can go with your accommodations if you need to change anything. And then where they're struggling the most. We also go, I sit down and I go through every single accommodation, make sure they understand what's supposed to be given to them, if they are getting that in class, and if they need me to advocate for them in the classroom. And then at the very end, for these two, I think those are the most important. Their weakness is usually what I do as their transition goal. So if they're not a junior or senior, and I'm not putting them in as a college transition goal, I always look at their weakness. So if they are, say, anxious, we would work on like strategies or coping strategies in order for them to calm down in the classroom situation. So what sets them off and what can we do to help them? That's what I do for transition. And then I like them to kind of tell me anything about them that they want me to know. The last thing you have to do with the student is our transition assessments. These ones are hard because they don't have a login, so the kid can't save it in their login. You have to actually be with the student or make sure you trust them enough to print you a PDF copy and then email it to you. So I put a list of all the employability assessments. Those are the best to give for 9th graders and 10th graders to kind of figure out where they want to be. And then there's also independent living that would mostly go with our social skill kids and life skills. And then these are a couple other ones. Have y'all been to any of these yet? Used them at all?
I have, and then I didn't get it back, and then we like lost it forever, and.
Well, because it doesn't save it. So it's best if you sit down with the student. That way you can show them like, hey, print your results as a PDF and then show them how to email it to you at Schoology. That's the best way.
That was
My
something
seniors
I didn't know.
usually know how to do that, but not so much everyone else. Have y'all been to this yet?
I've been to this page.
Have you done it?
I've sent it to a kid.
You've sent it?
Yeah.
But you haven't gotten anything back? No.
The
it's-
best way to do it, I think, is if you have them in class.
Yeah. have
Because I
them
don't
sit
have
down.
anybody in class, so
Mhm.
I haven't done it. Because they're not with me.
Right, and so a great time is coyote time, because you should have a lot of your case, well, except for you, a lot of your caseload kids in your coyote time, and that way you can just make a day of it. So, there's that one. All right, any questions about what you need to do whenever a art is scheduled? No questions?
So how many times do we bug them, the teachers, if they don't send us?
So the first time you just send one, make sure there's a deadline on there, and then the second one, I would include Susan and Aaron, and then the third one, you would include an AP.
Okay.
So usually, once you include Aaron, Aaron's gonna follow up almost immediately with the teacher and tell them that it's a legal requirement that they have to fill it out. And normally, once they get that email, they're like, oh, okay, I've gotta do it. And then if that doesn't work, an AP will do it, and usually the AP will show up at the teacher's classroom and get it done. Because we have to have the information for everything to be accurate. It's a legal document, so it's very important that we have all the things. All right. All right, moving on to Success Ed. So if you do have your computer and you want to pull up Success Ed, you totally can. Miss Walker did send out a PLAF information, and this is all the stuff we're going to put in our PLAFs. Actually, can I open this up real fast? So I'm gonna pull up a kid.
There's a pen up there, I think we need to use it.
Will it
Yeah.
write?
I mean, it should,
Like,
but you
will it
gotta
write?
click. You gotta click somewhere to make it right. I just don't know what that is.
I'm just gonna type it into class. Okay. Should be far enough later.
You don't need to sit back there. You need to sit back
No, I think this is fine. Okay, so this is somebody who just had their art scheduled, so there's nothing on there yet because it was scheduled yesterday. But the first thing you're gonna do in Success Ed is you wanna make sure that you open up all of your tabs so that everyone can go in and fill out the appropriate information. So, the first thing that you need to do is our present levels. That's gonna be, I'm gonna make sure you hit the IEP goals. So you'll open up the present levels, and you'll make sure you have a new draft. Your IEP meeting date will go here, which I'm not gonna be able to type it in. And then we have our physical, behavioral, functional, and academic. Our academic is going to be where everyone else fills out, and then you will fill out everything else. So for academic, make sure your impact statement is in there, which if you haven't looked through this PLAF template, it's a great resource. And then your goal book, which we'll go over there here in a second. The second thing I do is I just list the academics out, so English, science, math, and history, and then I put who needs to fill out the information, so they know exactly where they're supposed to go, and they don't delete anything that they shouldn't. All this information needs to have a data source. So our data sources are their FIE, it's going to be MAP scores, STAR scores, their current grades, and then teacher input, and even what the kid says about the class whenever you do your transition. You can put all of that as data sources.
And just to clarify, there's one impact statement, correct, at the top?
So you can put an impact statement for each academic area, but if you're able to cover everything in one, that's what's preferred. So, yeah, you don't have to put one for each subject
But it
area.
goes at the top of the academic.
It does, and so I like to bold it just so that everyone knows that it's there. And then, I try to include all the areas, so if they're deficient in like math calculations and reading comprehension, I would make sure that the one at the very top has everything, and then how it impacts their access to education.
So you don't have to add that to math and science and social studies.
You can if you want to, it's a lot of work, yeah. And what I can do is, let's see. I wonder if this is saved. I think my login is saved. Yep. What I use, instead of doing the present level wizard, I just click here, and then, oh, don't run back. And then say it's an SLD in reading, and then I pick which one, so. I will do that one too, in comprehension. And then it should give you like 3 paragraphs. What I do is I take the most important things from each of the paragraphs, I combine them into one, and of course I add the student's name. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the steps that we have to take whenever we get an ARD meeting notice. And so this is going to go over everything that you need to know from start to finish. So what we're going to be looking at is, once the ARD is scheduled, we're going to talk about the different teachers that we need to speak to, parent letters that need to go home. We're going to go through the ARD checklist and different forms we have to do in Success Ed. And then at the end, if you have any questions, we're going to step through those. Okay, so you get an email that says an ARD has been scheduled. That will come from our DIAG, and you're going to immediately get out your checklist. So I did handle a checklist. This is what it looks like. So you'll make sure you put your student's name at the top, and then you want to add the ARD date and the time. This notification doesn't have anything to do with you. It's going to, that's what Susan Bieber is going to do. She's going to send out all of the ARD notices, so you don't have to worry about that in Success Ed. But you will need to figure out from the parent if they're going to attend in person, by phone, or if we can hold the meeting without them. This one is usually only for our seniors. Then you will go on to fill out the rest of the paperwork on when you sent the parent email and if they have responded, who you have sent teacher input emails to and when they respond, and then we'll go through the rest of that here in a second. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to email teachers. So I do have a couple of templates that I'm going to send to you guys, but this needs to be done as soon as possible. That's going to give your teachers plenty of time to get valuable feedback back to you on how the student's doing in the classroom. So you're going to be super formal, let them know that the student that they have in class is scheduled for an ARD meeting, and when that ARD meeting is, you also need to give them a due date so that they have like when they need to get that information back to you. It is a requirement that they provide you with meaningful, specific feedback, and that way you can fill out your PLAFs and goals for that student. In this teacher email, you also want to include all resource teachers and inclusion teachers that service your student. That way they can fill out the appropriate areas in the Success Ed. The second email you're going to want to send out is our parent email. We have 2 parent emails. The first one is going to have the parent survey. This is going to be their input on their child, and that's going to go into the functional, physical, and behavioral PLAFs in Success Ed. The second parent email is actually going to be done 5 days prior to the ARD date. It's going to have the present levels, annual goals, and then if they have any questions or concerns that they need to reach out to you prior to the ARD meeting. Why did it do that? All the third thing we're going to talk about once the art has been scheduled is going to be our transition. This is when you pull the student. Normally, you're only allowed to pull them during CTE classes or elective classes. That way they're not being pulled from their cores. You're going to do this questionnaire with them. And I'm going to kind of go over step by step why we ask these specific questions, and then we'll show you where you're going to input them in Success Ed. So we're going to be talking about the different areas that they want to pursue after graduation, if they're going to go to trade school, a 2-year or a 4-year college, different jobs that they're interested in and why they're interested in it, and then it's always important for them to have a backup plan. We're also going to talk about if they're working, because in our transition supplements, we have to put in if they have community experience, if they have independent living skills. So that's why these questions are important. I do like to ask our students what they feel like they're successful in. That way you just get a better understanding for how they're doing in their own classes. And then what classes are most difficult and why. So the why is very important, because if they're not getting their proper accommodations, we can adjust those in the meeting. If we need to address different goals, we can also look at that during the meeting. Down towards the bottom are some of the most important questions. These are going to drive your transition supplements, both in the coordinated set of activities and then also in the transition goal that you do with the student. So figuring out what they like to do in their free time just gives you a better connection with your student. Figuring out what their strengths and weaknesses are. So what are they good at that's not necessarily like solving 2-step equations or memorizing things. You want to know, like, are they a good communicator? Are they good advocators for themselves? Are they highly organized? Those kind of things. And then you want to ask the same questions for weaknesses. So if they are not very organized, your goal is going to go towards how to help them be more organized in the classroom and be successful. I think that's any questions? No questions? Not at the moment. The second thing you have to do, which is sometimes difficult because the student has to be in your presence, is you're going to do transition assessments with them. These top ones, the employability ones, are going to be done as freshmen and sophomores. These are going to kind of drive what they want to do in the future, what they think that they're going to be good at. What happens when you go to these is you don't have to actually sign in. You sign in through Clever, but it doesn't save. So you have to have the student print out their results in front of you, or you're going to lose all the information. So it's very important that you just send them the link to do, because then they always forget to send it back to you. But these are a requirement. You'll bring the results to the ARG meeting. If a parent wants to ask you about them, they can. But these are official documents that go into their folder for the rest of their high school career. All right, we're going to move. We're going to move to Success Ed. So this is our main platform, as most of you know, and we're going to go step by step what is expected when you get to writing your IEP. So I'm not going to say that out loud, but we're going to look at the student and go step by step. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to open up drafts for all the areas of the IEP that you're writing. So the first area that we're going to talk about is our annual goals. So you click annual goals, you have to make sure you're stuck on either SE Manager or SE IEP goals. That's the only way you're going to see these items. So you'll click new draft, and it's gonna pop up right here. You have to put in a start date. So just do a random start date. And if they are a freshman, sophomore, or junior, it will go for an entire calendar, or full 365 days, 4 days. And then if they're a senior, you'll do the last date as the last day of school, because they're not going to work on that goal once they graduate. So once you do that, you will click save, and a bunch of stuff is going to populate. For our students, we have to have goals in any area that they're serviced. So if they are in resource or inclusion math, they need to have a math goal. If they are in resource or inclusion English, they have to have an English goal, and then we have to provide a transition goal for them. So for our academic goals, everything goes right in here. You have to make sure you click your subject, which we can do math, and then everything will pop up in here. For goals, we have 2 ways to write a goal. The first way to write a goal is going to be using our TEKS. You'll click what grade level they are, which this is a 9th grade student. We will go through the different TEKS that they may need to work on. You will click a specific one, and it should populate. And then you will have to, once you click your TEK, you can go down here to goal and you can build their goal from there. So we always do in the next, or by the next annual ARD or in 36 instructional weeks. And then you always have to provide 1 to 2 conditions. So with certain accommodations like clarification or notes, or with the help from their case manager or inclusion teacher, that's going to be your condition. So we'll just click with 1 to 2 step directions and calculator device. And then we have to evaluate them somewhere. So I usually do teacher observations and unit tests. Those are the easiest ones for us to collect data on. And we always want them to get at least a 70% on those. So it will auto-populate your goal. If you need to adjust it in any way you can, you just have to hit save. It will pop in here and then you can adjust what you need to adjust. That is for our academic goals. For math, you'll also do one for English. And then for transition, we're not going to say that because this is a test student. For transition, the only other difference is you'll scroll all the way down to the bottom and click transition, and you will have to write your own goal here. The best way to get this one is through Goalbook, which is where I'm going to show you guys next. So this is our program that we use for goals. The best way to pick a goal is by just going to the bottom and click Browse Learning Goals. You'll click on, we'll do math again, at a 9th grade level with a mild amount of support. And a lot of people need help with equations. So you'll pick your goal this way. You can click on it and manipulate it however you need. What's great about Goalbook is that you can click on some of these things and it's going to give you tools that you can use to measure the goal. So there's going to be different assessments in here. It's going to give you progress monitoring resources that you can use. It's even going to break it down so if the kid is in resource math that you can actually break it down by 9 weeks. So you're not trying to measure it all within a certain, like the full entire year, you're breaking it down into steps.
So what if they're not reaching their goal? Can you reassess it and redo the goals?
Yes, so when you're updating goals, you update goals every 9 weeks. You'll put in the progress. If by the 3rd progress monitoring, you're like, this kid is not going to meet this goal, you can click that you're going to, you'll click on there, there's a spot, we'll get there in a second, but you'll click that they are not going to reach the goal and you are planning to discontinue the goal and reassess for the next ARD year. So you'll do that whenever we do progress monitoring updates and whenever we update goals for annual ARDs. So that's on goals. The next one we're going to look at is our PLAFs. So that is also done in, you can do Goalbook for that. The first thing that has to go in the academic side of PLAFs is you have to put in the impact of disability. So how is this specific disability impacting their learning? So in order to do that, you would click what specifically they have. So if they have a SLD in, say, all subject areas, and it's affecting their comprehension and their problem-solving skills, it literally is going to write it for you. All you have to do is, we don't like parentheses, so you need to put the student's name. And then you just need to make sure that what's written in these parentheses is for the student. So what they're gonna learn in that year or what they're struggling with that year, it needs to be specific to the student. So it's going to auto-populate everything for you. You just make adjustments. You can summarize these 2 paragraphs, but, because this one is extremely long because they have multiple areas of SLD. But then you'll just copy and paste this and put it straight into the PLAF. Let me go back here and show you guys PLAFs. So our PLAFs, you have to make sure you're in IEP goals. And it's our present level, so where the student is currently performing. And you always have to put the date, that's the biggest thing, or it won't save. And we're gonna scroll down to academic. So at the top of the academic is gonna be the disability statement. And then you'll have to have an area written for English, math, science, and social studies. So all areas, whether they're serviced in those areas or not. You have to tell how they are doing in the class. You have to include as much data as possible from the teacher, from different scores. That's all gonna go right here.
So it doesn't matter if they have functional, don't have functional or behavioral problems?
We're gonna get there. So, in your functional section, I have linked to this presentation, which you're going to get a cheat sheet for functional. It looks like this, so it's gonna give you exactly what you say in these areas if there's no concern. So for functional, this is going to be that the student is able to communicate well, is able to participate in group work activities, they're able to speak appropriately to their peers and their teachers, and they're respectful. This you can observe in your own classrooms, you can observe it in other classrooms, and then it's gonna come from teacher reports. That's for functional, and I actually, let's see. Here. Oh, that's the training thing that we had. Okay, so, I don't know. Oh, it's right there, but that's okay. Transition. Too many tabs. We'll just open it up real fast. So your teacher input form is going to look like this, and everyone has their own that is specific to them. And what it's gonna have on here is, if you scroll down, it's going to have behavior. So this stuff can go in both functional or behavior, because if they're able to come on time and they're on task, that's functional, they're able to function. But then also for behavioral, you could use if the teacher says that they're competent in responding to redirection, they respect authority, that's gonna go into your behavior section. So functional will go right here, behavioral is right here. And then physical can go a lot of different directions. If they're in a PE class, you would talk to their PE teacher or their athletics. They're able to like run, jump, and maneuver around the school building without the help of others. They can write legibly, so a lot of our kids, all we use are computers, so are they able to use writing utensils and it's legible? They can use various materials in the classroom, so depending on what class you're in, are they able to use the materials that you're giving them? So that will go in our physical area. And I think that's that one. All right, we are gonna go through testing information. There we go. So we have 2 ways to look at testing data, and this is all going to go into our PLAF for academics. The first way is going to be looking at MAP scores. We do MAP testing for all of English and math, and we do that for our freshmen, sophomore, and then some juniors do that as well. So in order to view the MAP data, you're going to go to MAP growth. You will scroll down to student profile. then student profile. And then you will find your student. So I'm just going to do a test student. Okay, so when we pull up their map data, it's gonna give us a ton of information. It's going to give us, obviously, the score that they have. It's also going to tell you right here, this one didn't guess, he actually took his time, so if they were rapid, it's going to tell you the percentage of questions that were affected by them rapid clicking answers and just going to the next one. It does give you an error range, so he scored anywhere between 213 and 219, which he's on the higher level for mathematics for a freshman, which is good. It's going to tell you where you want to look at for growing. So he needs more instruction in number and algebraic methods, writing and solving linear functions. So you can pull information from here. We don't have any of this because this was just our beginning of year assessment. And then it also tells you whether or not they think that they're gonna pass the STAR test. So that's super important for our Algebra 1 teachers and our English 1 teachers. So if you click on this stuff, it's going to tell you exactly what skills you want the student to develop. And this goes hand in hand with writing your goals for math. So he is ready to develop a skill in determining the value of a term in an arithmetic sequence given a contextual situation. So you could take that skill, look at your TEKS for Algebra 1, and then develop a goal that goes along with that skill. That's something that you would want to work on for the entire course of the year. That way, the goal has to last a whole year. You can't finish a goal in 9 weeks because they always have to have a goal because they're in inclusion or resource math. So you want to make sure that the goal is not too easy, but also not too hard where it's not obtainable. So this is how you would find that information to go into your PLAF, and then you would also use the same information in determining what goal would be good for them.
So you can't scaffold a goal, like,
So normally, like, breaking it down.
well,
Like adding
let's say,
objectives?
let's say this goal is right for him at this moment, and then he does get proficient in it, can't you then just add the next goal on top, or does this goal have to last?
So if you
The whole
think
year.
that this goal is not going to last the entire year, you would have to make 2 goals at the beginning. If you were to add a new goal in, you would have to hold another, it's just a brief ARD, so we'd have to get a general education teacher together with the principal, the parent, the student, so we'd have to hold a whole nother meeting to add a goal. So if you think that, yes, they're going to be able to complete that, say, by Christmas, go ahead and have another goal in there. And what you can do then is when you're doing your progress reports, you'll say, like, not yet, we haven't started this one yet, will be assessed in the third 9 weeks, or so on or so forth. Another great one with this one is the reading, which I got out of it, I think. No, that's not gonna do it. Try one more. So for reading, it's going to give you their Lexile number, which is super important in PLAFs. All PLAFs for reading and English have to have this number in it so that the parent and the student know where they fall on that. So that's super important information. Let's see. The other testing data is going to come from Eduphoria. So we'll just look at a random student. Okay, so anytime you want to pull data about a student's testing on campus, you're going to go to Eduphoria, you'll go to Test and Scores, and it should populate with all of their STAR scores, any CFAs or benchmarks that they have taken on campus, and you'll be able to see whether they're meeting the standards. So, say, let's see, we will do they did a mock Algebra 1 STAR test, and he met grade level, which is wonderful. That doesn't always happen. We're gonna open that up so you can see all it. So what you would include in the PLAP if you're doing it from this side of things and you're not looking at MAP scores, you would make sure you put your raw and your percent score. You would mention that they did meet grade level, so they are on level with all of their peers. And then down here, what you can pull is you can pull a area of strength and you can pull an area of weakness. So on the right-hand side over there, it's gonna tell you that he got 11 out of those 13 questions right. So he's proficient in graphing linear functions, so that would be a strength that he has. I always like to sandwich my strengths and weakness, so I do at least one strength and then I'll do a weakness, and then I always close out the PLAP with another strength that they have. As far as weaknesses, it looks, I cannot read that. So there were two, you got 2 out of 3, that's actually not bad. Yeah, so this one, he missed both of the write an equation of a line that is parallel or perpendicular to the X or Y axis. So if you're gonna put that in as a weakness and you think that he really struggled there, you can put it in as a weakness and say that you will address it with a goal that continues to work on that particular area in math. Does that make sense? Yes? Did I miss
Got it.
anything? Okay. I feel like I'm talking really fast. All right, the last one that we're gonna go over together is going to be our progress reports. So we are on the 6-week progress report, and this has to be done every 9 weeks. So usually I have my teachers start about 6 weeks out because it is sometimes very difficult to assess 45 kids on their goals. So you want to start with plenty of time to do that. So you'll go to IEP goals, you'll click progress reports, and these are all the goals that the student has or is working towards. Every progress report will correlate with a reporting period. And so if you're doing it for an ARD, per se, you'll click on the plus sign. And if you have an ARD coming up for the student, your reporting period is always going to be the annual review. So this will be the last thing that you do. This is either going to determine whether you're discontinuing the goal or if you are going to master it out, like they've completed it and they're meeting all the standards. What needs to go here is all of your data, and then you also need to make sure it's printed and in their file folder. A parent can request all of this data at any time during their high school. So you have to make sure that this information is correct and that you're using the proper tools in order to assess them. This one has, it looks like 2 English goals, so they were working on 2 at the same time. And they were measuring it by grading and observation. So what the teacher was observing, and it just looks like daily test and teacher test. So the actual teacher of record was the one that was providing these services to the special education student. So once you get all your data in here, you'll type whether or not they met the standard, which they already did because it says 7 out of 10 times, and they were trying to do 7 out of 10 times no matter what. So once you type everything you need to type, then you'll come up here to the top and you will hit mastered. So once you hit mastered, the box is gonna gray out and you can no longer type in those boxes. So make sure you fill out this information before you click the mastered button. Say for this one, she hasn't quite made it there yet, you wanna continue working on that skill with her, you would write in here that you wanna do all that stuff, and then you would click discontinue. And then you would make sure that your next goal was similar or better addressed that with that student. Maybe what the exact TEK was that you were working on didn't align quite well with what was being taught in the classroom, so you would just adjust it and then rewrite it. This is also where you were talking about, if you wanted to write more than one goal, you would click not yet addressed, and that way you wouldn't have to write for that progress reporting period. All right. I'll leave that one. And do y'all have questions that I missed?
Can you go back to that screen where it had you did the or annual goals, I guess?
The goals.
Yeah, and then there was like a drop down that had 1, 2, 3, 4. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it was on this one. The progress
The
reports.
progress, yes.
Okay.
So when would you use those at different times or whatever?
Okay, so this is a little bit differently, it goes a little different than what you would see as a normal report card. Like normally you have the first report card, then the second, then the third, then the fourth for the year. This is gonna go off of the calendar year for the ARD. So no matter what, so if the ARD is in January and you're assessing that 9 weeks later, so March, right before spring break, even though it's the third report card that's about to come out, you would still be putting progress report period 1. So even though it's report card 3 for the year, it's the first time that you're reporting on the progress. So then the second one would be at the end of the year. And then when they come back the next year in August, their next reporting period would be 3, even though it's the first report card. So these are gonna align with the ARD calendar year and not the school calendar year. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah? Okay.
What, if I don't have access to my caseload grades, who's the best person to go to for that?
Okay, so all of your people should be in Ascender. So let me go here. So there's 2 ways you can get that information. The first one is gonna be, if you don't have access at all, you'll go to Liz, and she's located in the front office. You'll just bring her a list of your kids, and then you will go to, give her also the ID, just makes it a lot easier on her to find which specific kids, because some have the same first and last name. But she can add them into your caseload. Most of your caseload should already be added. It should just be inclusion students that Liz has to add. So if you want to look for that information, you would go to your student group reports. Everything is going to be listed in here, and then you should have access to 2 groups up top. So these would be all of your caseload students that you write IEPs for, and then the second group would be all of the kids that you service in inclusion classes. And then once you're in there, you should be able to see all of their grades, missing assignments. You can look at their attendance, because attendance will also go into the class for, it can go in behavior if they're skipping, it can go in all of that information. So you can pull up grades and see exactly why they are failing, if they are failing, are they turning in their work. So that can also go in academics. So say this person is not doing her homework, so that is contributing to her grade being so low. What can we do to help that? How can we get her more resources? Can we get her to tutoring? Is the bus situation a problem that we need to adjust? Those are things that can all go into the academic class. And then in order to see attendance, you would look on here and it will pull up if they're absent. So normally for us, if they're absent in the middle of the day, it's a red flag. It was either a teacher mistake and they just accidentally counted them absent, or they're skipping the class. So I can show you one person that this would be a big red flag for somebody, and you would need to, if they're on your caseload, you would have to immediately contact admin that way, because we have to hold attendance ARDs. If they miss more than 8 school days in one specific class, they would have to do buyback hours in order to get credit for the class. Otherwise, they would lose it completely. So this would be a huge problem right here. It's for these, and this one is lunch, so, they're most likely sitting in the lunchroom for all 3 lunches and just not going to class. And then maybe they're going out to lunch and they're not coming back, or at least not back in time to get to the next class. So this is a big red flag, and you need to make sure that you contact whoever their AP is. That way that they can call them down to the office and address the problem immediately before we get to December and we're like, oh no, we're gonna lose credit for this. And yeah, that's never a fun conversation to have with a student, especially a senior.
So is that what you would use, if you have to write goals for a student that you never see, that's on your caseload, but you never see them, is that what you're gonna use, is going through there?
So whenever you're writing goals for a student that is not on your caseload, you're going to want to use either goal book, or you're gonna wanna use, the tool within here. So I would get information from the teacher. What are they learning? What are their objectives and goals going forward? And make sure you're picking something that's maybe later in the school year. That way they're not mastering it right then. Once you figure that information out from your teacher, you'll go through this again. So you'll click that. You'll pick the TEK that best align with what the teacher said that they're learning, which we'll click. Yeah. Click this one. So, and then you'll create your goal from there. So you'll make sure you click within 36 instructional weeks. The conditions, look at their accommodations that they have in that course, and you'll use those to figure out this one right here. So say that they have copy of class notes and they have clarifiers, so those should both be on here. Clarification and copy of notes should be on there somewhere. We'll just do clarification and check for understanding. So you would pick the conditions that you would want them to be successful, so the student will be able to do this when given support and clarification. And then again, you'll pick your evaluation method and how you want them to be, what percentage you want them to reach. So you can do 70% at every progress reporting period. You could do 70% at 3 out of the 4 progress reporting, because kids don't always do perfect every time. They have off days, so sometimes if you give them a little bit of wiggle room, it helps.
So you said the parent can get all this information. Is there like stuff I should be sending to the parent at the beginning of the year that is not all of this? Or does this just go out when they request it?
So 2 things, yes, you should be contacting the parent at the beginning of the year to let them know who you are and what your job is and how you are going to support their kid throughout the year. I usually send it as like a welcome letter at the beginning of the year, or if I get a new student within the middle of the year, I'll send it out within a couple of weeks. That way they know who I am. I also add the parent input form in that email, so it's already gone out to them and they can fill that out for me, so I'm not stressing about it later. The stuff that needs to go home is going to be your PLAFs and your goals, and that's gonna go out 5 days prior. So it's a legal requirement that we provide the parent with all the information we're going to discuss at the ARD. That way they have plenty of time to talk it over with their student, and they have plenty of time if they need to make an adjustment, or if they think something is wrong, or no, I don't think that's true at all, we need to readjust this or make an accommodation that will better fit it. We can do that prior to sitting down. We never want to be blindsided in the meeting. We always want to know what the parent concern is prior to the meeting. So let's see. I'm going to show you how to pull up the PLAFs to send it home. So view all drafts. So you want to send this present levels home, and then you also want to send the annual goals home. So to do that, you'll click on them, and at the top, you'll do English, and it's going to save right here. and this is exactly what the parent is going to get. So you wanna make sure that it's all factual information and not like, oh, well, I think the kid is lazy. Because that can't be measured. We can't measure a kid being lazy. So you wanna make sure that all of this is stuff that you can measure in the classroom or see through data. So it's gonna have, this is everything that's gonna go to the parent, they're gonna see it. You're also going to send home copies of any teacher reports that you get back. So I always make sure I let my teachers know that this is gonna be viewed by admin, parents, and anybody who's in the committee is allowed to request that information. So that's gonna be your PLAF, you'll save that one. And then you'll also do the same thing for goals. So you'll go in and click, and you'll hit print, or, yeah, and it will come up here. And you'll save that to your computer and send it out to the parent.
Is there an option for another language?
For goals, no. For PLAFs, I believe there is. Let me see. Nope, there's not. We do have 2 ESL coordinators on our campus. They're stationed in A125 and I think B225. If you send them a document, they can translate it over the phone to the parent if they request that, or I know we have tools that we can transfer all of our stuff and then send it home in Spanish. But usually for our kids that are ESL or ELL, we're gonna have a representative in the ARD meeting anyways, and they're gonna translate any questions that the parent might have. But it would be a good idea to get one of those 2 ladies to help translate over the phone, just in case they do have questions prior to the meeting.
You said that you have a letter that you send out at the beginning of the year. Is that just a form letter that you just go through and put the student's information in that you've already have made up?
Say that one
Is
more.
it a template?
It's
Your
not a
template,
template,
yeah.
it's just like me saying hello, like, hi, this is who I am. I wanted you to make you aware that I'm in your students' this period class and this period class, and if they ever need to talk, they can find me here. I'll be assessing their transition goals, and then I kind of list out like who the inclusion teacher who the inclusion provider is in their core classes. That way, if they're unsure, because a lot of our freshmen have no idea what an inclusion teacher is and what they do, and they also don't want to be singled out, so they don't want to ask questions. So it's a good way to just have the parents also start that conversation at home, like, hey, that person is not just in there for you, but if you do need help, ask them questions. Don't be shy. So is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, and then like my parent letter that I send out is gonna be this one, and it's just talking about their annual ARD date. I usually ask in there, do you plan to attend by phone, in person, or can we have the ARD meeting without you? And then that their students' present levels and their annual goals are attached, that we're going to be discussing all of that in behavior at the actual meeting. And if they have any questions or adjustments, that they can let me know. So that's the template that I send home all of that information in. Any other questions? No questions? I want to make sure that I put all of these ones. I think we hit all of that.
Your communication log that you keep with the parents, do you keep that digitally or you actually write it down and keep it a
Good
written
question.
form?
I do. I write it down. So that's gonna be your communication log that's right there. It's not just with parents. So that's every time I pull the student and talk to them. I wanna, because sometimes students will be like, well, I don't even know who that person is. Well, I document every time I pull the student, what we talk about, and if there were any issues moving forward. I'm gonna get something real fast, and I know I'm gonna step out of the thing. There we go. Okay, so file folders are my best friend, and they make it super easy to get all your paperwork done. So instead of writing a student name at the top, I try to I label them as numbers. That way I can reuse folders year after year. But what I keep in here is, from the start, they already have this, I already have it filled out. I keep their communication logs, so anytime I pull and talk to the student, I'll write it down on here. I keep the student's schedule so that I always know where to find them. And then their most current accommodations. You wanna know these like the back of your hand, because you're the person that's gonna consistently fight for that student, to make sure that all their needs are being met and that they are doing well and being successful in class. Especially our freshmen, they don't advocate for themselves very well. So that's why for freshmen, I like to, for their transition goal, it usually has a lot to do with advocating and communicating with teachers, and then also organization, because they're not organized whatsoever. And I don't think that I actually went over transition goals in goal book, so I'm gonna show you that real fast. So in our goal book, again, it's an amazing tool. You'll click transition at the top, and if we're working for a ninth grader, this is a great one, meeting deadlines. How many of your freshmen are missing the deadline for a grade or for an assignment? This is a good one for them to just work on with their case manager one-on-one. Another one I like to do is self-advocacy. So these are gonna be communication, like how do I advocate for myself in the classroom? So all of these are extremely customizable. It can give you just a start, like where am I gonna start for this goal? And within the goal, you can change the level of support. So if this student is performing on grade level for everything and they just need a tiny bit of support, you would do the grade level goal. If they're kind of midline and they would need an extra push or support in order to be successful, you would go to approaching, and then the last one would be developing, that they would need a lot of your support in order to be successful. And then each area is going to give you different resources at the bottom, different objectives that you could use with that goal. And then there are some, you can like say the student, you want that goal, but the student is ADHD. So it will generate different strategies that you can use with that student in order for them to be successful. So visual prompts, checklists that we can do. And these can all be like, checklists are used quite frequently as an accommodation, making sure the teacher provides checklists for the students so that they know when certain things are due or which order they need to do the assignments in class, and that kind of stuff. So it's gonna generate a bunch of different strategies that you can use with all your students. So, any other questions?
Like that.
You like that? This is like my favorite tool ever. I use it for academics, transition,
Pretty much everything.
everything. Yes, it gives you a ton of strategies that you can use for any grade level, any type of student, any disability. It's going to tell you exactly the things they need to be successful. So, yeah, that's it.
Very good, very informative.
Wonderful.